What, you have a podcast?
Really?
Computer, show the historical documents.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Recovery from Politics Podcast. I am your host, Kyle Freeman. Today is Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023. The thing that I love more than anything else in the world, like even more than, oh, Kyle, I love you, or even my own kids saying, Daddy, I love you, or any of that, is to hear the words, Kyle, you were right. Right? It totally like feeds all the ego in the world. It's not a positive trait. Like I kind of hate it, but at the same time, it makes the endorphins happy. So what am I supposed to do? I mean, just being able to predict something, and like I've done that before, where I'm like, oh yeah, that relationship, that's not gonna last, man. That's just gonna, yeah. That's over. And you know, you don't want to be right because you want your friends to be happy, but and then at the end of the day, you're like, yeah, no, that's gonna be a train wreck. That's a dumpster fire in 4 months. I'm calling it now. And I've been right before. Not all the time, thankfully. Otherwise, my friends would probably hate me. My internal pessimism does that to me. But one time in particular, it was the 2013 Seattle Seahawks season. I'm a huge Seahawks fan. Right, and all through the season, you know, it was back and forth, hell on earth, man. They went 13-3, but to be a Seahawks fan, you would have almost felt like it was 8-8, right? They just, every game was a heart attack. There were very few easy games all year, even against subpar competition. You would think, man, in hindsight, knowing that team turned out to be as special as it was, you would have thought some of the teams they lost to, they should have just blown the wheels off of, right? But they didn't. So the whole season, you're walking on eggshells, you're having heart attacks every game, and the playoffs were no different, right? We went into the playoffs, and we had to play the Saints and the 49ers. And even though the Seattle Seahawks had the best defense in the league that year, the 49ers and the Saints were like number 2 and 3 best defenses. So we just had a hell of a time with both. I mean, both of those games, neither one of them were locked up until the end. They were very, very close, and just like a typical Seahawks game, you know, we're having a heart attack the entire time. But at the end, it's celebratory. We end up facing the Denver Broncos in the Super Bowl, and I was worried in the conference game for the AFC because I was like, I don't want the Patriots. There's something about Bill Belichick in the Super Bowl that I just, you know, even though his team on paper isn't equal to whoever the hell he's playing over here in the NFC, he always ends up making it a close game. And I don't want a close game. But as soon as it was announced the Broncos, I remember, I wish I had it on tape. I wish I was as boisterous then as I am now. But they, you know, the very next day, the Monday after it had been decided, okay, Seattle versus Denver, Super Bowl 48, I went into work and everybody was like, oh my God, Denver is so scary. They're the greatest offense that has ever lived. And that's true. At the time, by almost every conceivable metric, Peyton Manning was having the year of his life. He had massive receivers who were just yards after catch and touchdown and just every ratio, every metric you could think of. Denver was decisively the runaway, hands down best offense the NFL had ever seen up to that point. Okay, just years, decades of changing the rules and making it impossible to tackle anybody or go after the quarterback to completely favor the passing game had finally paid off, and the NFL had the single greatest offense ever. And then you had the Seattle Seahawks, who, again, because their very nature through the playoffs, they had to play the two other toughest defenses. So our offense did not look fantastic. I mean, it got the job done. Congrats, we got there. But really, everybody was like, yeah, Seattle's offense behind this Russell Wilson guy, this short little guy who can't do anything, like, okay, yeah, he scrambles well, but he's not a touchdown machine like Peyton Manning, and they don't have any receivers. You know, it was, I mean, I remember even the Seahawks fans, we were excited to be in the Super Bowl, and we really were like, hell yeah, bring it. But at the same time, there were a lot of people like, careful, man. This is the Denver Broncos, and Peyton Manning is coming to town. But I remember that Monday morning, right after, somebody came up to me and was like, "What do you think?" And I said, honestly, it's going to be the easiest game of the year for the Seahawks. I was like, it's going to be a blowout. We're going to destroy them. And he was like, why do you think that? And, hindsight being what it is, everybody should have seen it coming. But for me, I was sitting here, I'm like, look, man, Seattle has won every game trial by fire, man. I mean, we have had to claw and fight and scramble for every single inch on that field. I mean, it was the literal embodiment of that Al Pacino speech in Any Given Sunday. Clawing for that inch, fighting for that inch. I mean, every Seattle game, all through the regular season and the playoffs, was that. Our character was not in question. We could play with a lead. We could play from behind. We never gave up. We fought every single second of every single game to win. We did not leave a single inch on the field that we could have gotten had we, wanted to. We earned all of it. And again, our character was never in question. We knew how we would react, even if the tables were turned and the Broncos went out to a 21-0 lead in the first quarter. I still would have sat there in the audience and been like, yeah, we're still in this. That was where I was sitting. That was me. But on the other end, I'm like, look, they're the number one offense of all time because they haven't played anyone. All the great defenses, 49ers and the Saints and us, we were all on that side, and they didn't play any of us that year. They played a bunch of teams with high-flying offenses as well and no defenses. They were only allowed. It's like in boxing. If you show me an undefeated fighter, I'll show you somebody who has never fought anyone. Right? It's like there's a reason they're undefeated. They haven't fought anyone. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible, and I know a lot of people will freak out because they're like, oh, Money Mayweather. I have my own arguments with that, but yeah, I loved it because the Monday following the Super Bowl, there were a lot of people at my work at the time came up to me. It was like, holy shit, you called it. Oh my God. There was one guy in particular, he's like, I was sitting there during the game, and my wife's sitting next to me, and I just kept going, oh my God, Kyle was right. Oh my God, Kyle was right. The entire game. It was lights out. I knew it. I just did. I was like, the Denver Broncos have never played a good team. They didn't. They didn't play a good team all year. There's a reason they were so great, or they looked great. They were paper tigers. They weren't real. And I was like, I just thought it would be the easiest game of the year. I'm like, we're going to hit them in the mouth like they've never been hit. They have yet to face somebody like Cam Chancellor. They don't know what cornerbacks are, right? They don't know who Richard Sherman is. They just assume, oh, he's that punk who lost it after the conference championship. He's that loser. He's no big deal. And I get it. I get it. If you were not inside the Seattle bubble, if you didn't watch every single game, if you were not a fan of that team that year, and certainly the national media always loves to forget Seattle, you could totally have missed how that happened. But I was in it, and I was sitting there, and I was like, dude, I'm sorry. This is the easiest game of the year. And so I bring all that up because I am scared shitless of what's going to happen in about 10 days. Really scared. I'm having 2008 flashbacks like nobody's business. Okay? I had friends who were close to retirement, who were at retirement age, and they were just waiting for the right time to do it. And then 2008 happened, and it wiped out their savings. And so they never retired. They ended up dying before their retirement recovered. They had to prolong and extend their retirement. And so they literally died. There's this guy named Lynn, and he was fantastic. He was awesome. One of the nicest guys I've ever worked with. He was a great guy, and he deserved his fucking retirement. But because we tie retirements to the stock market, and the stock market took a shit one day in 2008, he didn't get it. He got the wonderful American dream of dying without ever retiring. And I know he wasn't the only one. So when we've got this debt ceiling thing coming up, there's a lot of me that's scared shitless, and I'm just like, look, I don't give a fuck. Like, honestly, Biden should have either declared the 14th Amendment or the $1 trillion coin or whatever the fuck his plan was. He should have done it weeks ago. Right? It shouldn't be his last resort. It should have been his first resort. That should have been his first tactic. Hey, GOP, negotiate with me or I'm just going to circumvent your ass. Like, that should have been his opening salvo. That shouldn't have been the thing he keeps in his back pocket, right? Like, Democrats suck at negotiation. They always suck. They always negotiate from a position of weakness. Every single fucking time they do this. And it drives me up the wall. It's like, you have the majority. What are you doing? Or you have these levers of power that you're saving for what? What are you saving them for? We all know they're there. And so right now, it looks like we're about to default and everything's going to go to shit. Everyone's going to lose their jobs. People are going to go hungry. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, I remember 2008 vividly. I was laid off. It started a domino in my life of one layoff after another for several years that I am still going to therapy over. Okay? It fucked my life something hardcore, and you're asking me right now to go through it again. Like, no. I'm in a different position now, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to take it any better. The amount of stress that is on me for, having the tenacity or, whatever, the pride to read the fucking news. I can't read the news without my heart rate, beating harder in my chest and faster. Like, I feel it. It is a very real thing to me. And so I hear these people who are like, no, you don't negotiate with terrorists. And I'm like, look. This is ridiculous to me. They're not terrorists. I mean, yes, people will die if they get their way, but way more people are going to die if they don't, right? Like, I don't care. Make the deal. Biden's already fucked up the rest of it. Make the deal. Who cares? Because everything else relies on a Supreme Court that has never demonstrated that they are on the side of Biden. And Biden is living in this fantasy world where the Republicans will one day regain their sanity and want to work with him. Like, I'm sorry, I saw this all the way back in 2009 when Obama bent over backwards trying to work with them, and they gave him nothing. And I'm like, dude, this is the same party. You were there. You had a front row seat. You were the vice president. Don't you remember this? This is the double-edged sword, or the double-sided sword, where you end up with, you want a politician who's experienced, and Biden's experienced, and he knows everybody in Washington, and that means he knows where the levers of power are, and he knows the inner workings of the parties, and he knows how to do this and that and whatever, and that's great. But the downside is that he doesn't see Mitch McConnell as the enemy. He doesn't see Kevin McCarthy as an asshole. He sees them as, oh, those guys I have lunch with in the Congress cafeteria when I was a senator. Right? That's not McConnell, the guy who fucked over the Supreme Court. That's Mitch and his wife Elaine. I went to their party they had this one time. Like, seriously, that's the downside, is you end up with a lot of that. And I'm sitting here like, he doesn't realize where he is. Now, I'm not attributing that to dementia or old age. I think that's bullshit. I think that's just a consequence of having been in the system for so long. He doesn't see the evil machinations at work. He sees people. And that is a weakness in this moment because they don't see him as people. But I love it. There's a teeny tiny little part of me that's like, this is fucking awesome, Kyle, because you are about to be proven right on everything you were screaming about 6 months ago. As soon as the Democrats lost the House and it became official, like, yes, Pelosi, no Democrat will be Speaker. It's going to be a Republican. As soon as it was official, I was sitting here and I was saying that the Democrats should move right now to delete the debt ceiling. Just shit can it. Just get rid of it. It doesn't need to exist. It's a thing we invented for World War I to make sure Woodrow Wilson didn't go batshit. But it's not necessary. It's a thing. We could just delete it. It serves no purpose other than to fuck our world up in 10 days. So I was sitting here in December 2022. They need to move right now to just get rid of this fucking thing. Because I saw the writing on the wall and I said, look, the same idiots who are going to hold Kevin McCarthy to the fire for his speakership are going to be the same idiots who are going to destroy this economy in 6 months. And I called it. And if we default like I think we're about to, it's going to be great. There's going to be a part of my brain that is going to be like, Kyle, once again, you were right. You were right. It was so great. You said a thing, and it turned out to be 100% true. And I wish I could take credit. I wasn't the only one doing this. There were plenty of op-eds and smaller level congressmen saying, hey guys, we really should not trust the assholes on the other side to operate in good faith. Like, there's a portion of the Republican Party right now that actively doesn't believe the debt ceiling collapsing would be a bad thing. Like, they think that all the economists in the entire world are lying to them the same way that scientists are lying to them about global warming. Like, they really believe that. They have conditioned themselves to distrust experts in their fields for so long. Global warming, anything else, that now it's totally okay for them to say, economist with decades of experience and Nobel Prizes? Psh, fuck those idiots. I know they're full of shit. They're just saying that so they can make money from someone. I don't even know who's paying them. But, like, that's it. Like, there is a portion of them that are like, we don't care if we default because we really don't see the negative. They live in this world where, well, I've not paid my bills before and nothing bad happened to me. And it's like, dude, that's not how any of this works. So those people, they're unreasonable. They're just out. Then you have another part of the party that legit thinks that if we default and send this country and this whole planet into another global financial disaster, that it's just going to help their election chances in 2024. So who gives a fuck? Like, literally, that's what they think. Like, Trump right now is advocating that we should default right now. And he's not saying that for any other reason other than he thinks it'll help him. So all his little, like, MAGA lunatics that are in Congress right now are just parroting that, like, yeah, let's default because it'll make Biden look bad. So that's their rationale. So there is no incentive for those two groups to go ahead and come to a negotiation, come to an agreement, or even think about it rationally and be like, dude, the debt ceiling is not the debt and the deficit, and these are all three separate things that have nothing to do with each other, and you guys are just, like, fucking shit up. Like, they don't care. They don't. And McCarthy is such a lunatic that he is sitting here like, no, if I can negotiate, I'll get my agenda through, and then I will be the greatest speaker of all time. Because that's his agenda. Because he could give a fuck about whether or not he actually does anything. Like, I don't believe that man has an honest bone in his body. If you told him that in 10 days' time, if he doesn't come to an agreement, that millions of people will be unemployed, lives ruined and destroyed, dreams just fucking wrecked. But that 2 days after all that happens, Biden caves and gives him everything he wants, he'll be like, fuck yeah, I won. I'm the greatest speaker ever. Pelosi can suck my dick. I literally think that's where he is right now. I don't think he cares. He doesn't want a default. Don't get me wrong. I do know that he thinks of a default as an asterisk on his record. Like, oh, fuck, I'd also be the first speaker to cause a default. So that's bad. But as long as he gets what he wants at the end, he'll see it as a net win. And Biden, I really do believe that the Democrats, they didn't go ahead and delete this thing because they were sitting there, and I think there are two beliefs that were going through the Democratic Party. One, which I mostly attribute to Biden and people like Schumer, because that's how they are, was that, no, the Republicans will regain their sanity at the 11th hour and make a deal that we can agree with. I do not have that optimism. The Republican Party is not sane. This has been a major complaint with me and the Democrats for a while now, as they always refer to MAGA Republicans. Oh, no, we love the Republican Party. It's the MAGA Republicans that we don't like. And of course, they're implying, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and those guys. Whatever, those people exist. But by doing that, it shows that the Democrats really do believe that there's a part of the Republican Party that is sane and wants to work with them. And I'm like, no, that is not the world we live in. That's the delusion. But it's going to look great, right? I'm going to be right. When this all defaults, I'm going to be sitting here and I'm going to be like, I fucking told you so, which are the greatest words I love saying. So I'm going to get, holy shit, Kyle, you were right. And it's going to be a big, huge internet hug to me. Oh, it's going to feel so good being right. And then I get to then turn around and be like, I fucking told you so. And that also is going to be its own imaginary hug to me and be like, oh, Kyle. Oh, it was so great to say those words. I love that. I love saying I told you so. Like, I so fucking love it. It doesn't happen often enough. I really wish it did. Sometimes I want to be in charge just so I can say that more often. I really do. So it's going to feel great when this all crashes and burns, everything goes to hell, and then all of a sudden it backfires on the Democratic Party and ushers in fascism. I'm going to be like, I fucking told you so. Like, I called it. Like, holy fuck. Like, and I know I'm not the only one saying this. I'm not. But still, I am one of the people saying it. So it's great, right? I get to join onto that bandwagon and be like, I fucking called it. And then, there's going to be other things that I'm going to be able to call. So if Biden decides to pull out of his back pocket, either he's going to mint the $1 trillion coin or the 14th Amendment, both of those are going to have to go before the Supreme Court, right? Because the GOP is not going to let this shit stand. So they're going to sue and say the president doesn't have the power to do it. Now, I personally do not think that even this Supreme Court is batshit crazy enough to rewrite the Constitution to not say what it very clearly does when the stakes are this high. If it were a little tiny minor bullshit thing, oh yeah, no way. 5-4, 6-3, absolutely no problem. Supreme Court's going to tell Biden to go shove it. But when the stakes would be default and a global financial catastrophe, I don't know if the Supreme Court is going to be gleeful about overruling the president in that case. I could see one or two of them be like, I just don't want to see this happen. And I could see them, signing on with the other side and then flipping it and be like, hey, it's the president's thing. But I'm not 100% on that. I'm like 60-40. I mostly think the Supreme Court is not suicidal. So, okay. But this is the same Supreme Court that just last year thought that overruling 2 generations worth of precedent in Roe v. Wade and sending it back to the states, like, their reasoning for that is that, this would be more peaceful. Like, that was a literal thing they cited for their reasoning was that they felt that the federal overreach of Roe v. Wade, and this is their words, of course, was causing too much distress and chaos in the union, and actually it would be more peaceful and better for the voters and the state legislatures to have a say. Like, that was their reasoning. Completely. They just made shit up and threw it at the wall and said we all have to live with it. And they've done that a few times. You've got shadow dockets, overturning precedents when it came to COVID things. You've got them just making up shit on the fly. They have been spending a good portion, and not just the Supreme Court, but like in years past, the Supreme Court has been very angry with the 14th Amendment for decades. Like a really long time. They have hated it, especially the part that has to deal with who gets to be a citizen and who doesn't. Like, they've been chipping away at the edges of that for a long time. So if you told them that they had an opportunity to just take a dagger and stab it in the middle of the heart of the 14th and get rid of it, because they really hate that fucking thing, they would do it in a heartbeat. They would. They would absolutely do it. Like, I have no... But again, maybe if the stakes weren't this high, I could see them doing it. But again, they've really wanted to gut this fucker for a long time. So I'm not 100%. I'm not sold that they're going to like suddenly see reason. I could easily see a 5-4 case where they're like, the 14th Amendment is great and all, but it was never the intent of the people who wrote the 14th Amendment to circumvent the two parties or the two legislative executive branches, to keep them from working together. It was never intended to be used in that way. Therefore, we rule that, the Treasury's checks they've been sending out now are bouncing, and that and then they'd find some similar bullshit with the $1 trillion coin, because that wasn't a Bill of Rights thing. That was something else. But they're going to go ahead and they're going to find a reason and say, well, that was never the intent. Remember, we're all originalists here, so we have to take into account what we think people who've been dead for 200 years think. So I could see them easily going that route. And according to economists, that would actually be worse than just defaulting. Was that if Biden claims 14th Amendment, fuck you bitches, and the Treasury keeps sending out checks. And then the Supreme Court, a week or two after that, so, 2 weeks worth of checks have been going out. And then all of a sudden the Supreme Court says, actually, no, that's not what, right? So let's say they go 5-4 and they say, no, the president doesn't have that power. 14th Amendment doesn't say what it clearly says it does. Again, there's precedent, so don't say they can't do that. So they'll do that. Well, now the United States didn't just not send out checks and not pay its bills. Now it's bouncing checks. Now, to put it simply, is it worse for you to just not pay your bill or to send your electric company a check that's no good? Because I'll tell you what the electric company thinks. The electric company thinks a bounce check is worse than no check because they fine you for that shit. So that's what could happen. That's why I don't think Biden's actually going to do it, because he's been leaking a lot of internal White House deliberation stories from anonymous sources say that they don't want to go the 14th Amendment or the $1 trillion coin because they're afraid the Supreme Court will overrule, and then it'll be worse because economists say a bounce check is worse than no check. And so the White House has been the one leaking all that stuff. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're not going to do it, which leaves us with either default or make a deal. Whatever, but I'm going to be right. It's going to be fantastic. It really is. I'm going to be right, and I'm going to be, I told you so, especially after the Supreme Court goes ahead and rules against Biden. I'm going to go back even further than 6 months ago. I'm going to go back to 2 years ago and be like, you motherfuckers need to pack the court right now. Like, I swear, I was like, no, pack it, impeach some bitches, do something. You need to do it because it is imbalanced with a bunch of crazy, lunatic, psychotic assholes. You need to do this right now. And everyone was like, oh, well, we can't anger Manchin and Sinema. We need them in the Democratic Party, even though one of them's an independent now. Who could have saw that coming? Oh, yeah, that was me too. So it's going to be great, right? I called this entire scenario, so if they default or they don't make a deal on time, I'm going to be right. And it's going to be great, and I'm going to be able to say I told you so. And then if either before or after the president gets bitch slapped by the Supreme Court, I'm going to sit here and be like, I fucking told you so again, for the shit I was saying 2 years ago where they should have packed the court and been like, no, Trump just did all this bullshit with 3 justices. We're not having it, and we need to do something. But of course, Manchin and Schumer and Pelosi and Biden all got in a room together and said, oh, that's just silly. The Republicans will regain their sanity, and it's totally okay. So it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. I'm going to be right, guys. I get to be right. And it's going to be great, because when we default and 300 million people are suddenly in distress, it's going to be worse than 30 million. Right? So the idea here is that we can't cave and give in to terrorist demands, which is the Republican Party, because that would hurt people too. Yes, but what, 30 million people versus 300? Now, I don't know. I watched The Wrath of Khan like every other kid, and I took away the lesson at the end where Spock kills himself to save everyone. And I got very much his dying words of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And 300 million seems like a bigger number than 30 million. So, what do you want to do here? And again, that's just within the United States. This will reverberate throughout the global economy. This is 2008 all over again, where the United States collapses and brings the whole fucking world in with them. Like, that's where we're set up now. Being the financial center of everything is great when times are good, kind of sucks when times are bad. And we're heading for that, but it's going to be great cuz I totally called all of this. So, I am going to cling to the only source of optimism and pro Kyle that I have, because I'm going to be scared shitless the entire time that my household is going to lose all financial activity just because a couple millionaires are swinging their dicks back and forth in DC, and there are these crazy people thinking, no, you can't negotiate with terrorists, and like, fuck you, I don't care. Like, the Republican Party knows that what they're asking for is so shitty because they're not asking for it right away. All of their plans have sunsets. They're like, no, by 2030 is when all of these things kick in. Like, they have delayed tactics. Nothing, if the president comes out with a deal and like totally caved to the Republicans tomorrow, which would be great, but if he did that, nothing would change until at least 2024, when the next Congress actually has to write a fucking budget. So we have a year and a half. We've got change. We've got time to fix it, to undo it. We could literally agree to everything they've been asking for, pass it, sign it, whatever. And then I think the Democrats should just fucking run on that. Be like, hey, guys, you do realize if you elect the Republicans, this shit will stand. And oh, by the way, I don't even think that's true, right? I think if the Republicans got their way and Donald Trump is their fucking nominee, do you think President Trump in 25 is honestly going to sit there and sign a bill that is going to destroy 30 million people? No, he's a populist. He's the one who told the Republican Party to stop trying to cut Medicare and Social Security because they're losers. He is not about to sign a financial bill that dooms his party to a recession. Right? So, I mean, it's not impossible, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's like, this is not set in stone. This is taking something that is set in stone. Like, we will default in about 10 days if nothing happens. So let's fucking do something. Let's change that. Let's kick the can down the road. I don't even care. Kick the can down the road, we'll deal with it. But for right now, I get to be right. Well, amidst all this distress and chaos in my life and everyone else's life, I get to sit here and give myself a big old hug and be like, Kyle, you were right, man. And tomorrow on your show, you get to tell everyone that you told them so. And it's going to be great. And you just cling to that, because that's all you've got right now, man. You got to cling to what you got. Nobody's going to judge you, right? Just like nobody judges somebody who has a bad day and they finish their day with a couple beers. Like, yeah, are the beers destructive and not helpful? Absolutely. But you know what? You had a rough day. And if that's what you need to cling to get through that rough day, then that's what you need to do. And so when the economy collapses and fascism comes ringing in 24, and Trump becomes the nominee and eventually the president, and the Republicans retake everything, and they destroy women's rights, and they destroy child labor laws, and they destroy unions, and they take us all back to a dystopian hellscape, I'm going to be able to sit here and you know what? Even if it is the only thing I can cling to, and it's not helpful, and it's kind of self-destructive, but if the only thing I can cling to make it through the fucking day with no money in my bank account and no livelihood is be like, man, I fucking called it. I was right. And I fucking told them so. Then that's what I got to do to make it through. Will people judge me for it? Sure. Just like they judged it when I had a few beers. It's fine. You know what? It's fine. It's what I need to do to make it through the day. It is. And I'll just hug myself very, very tightly with that as the world crumbles around me and the United States becomes a shithole. It's going to be great. It really is. I have no optimism for any of this. I'm sorry. I can only read so many stories about these assholes before, you lose all hope. And that's where I am right now. I have no hope that the Republican Party will come to their senses. Absolutely none. I think the second, I have no doubt that McCarthy, maybe, I could see at the 11th hour, McCarthy's like, oh, fuck, I got to make a deal. But the second he announces that, I could see him going onto the floor and being like, all right, we have a deal. We're going to get ready to vote. And then Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz or one of those Freedom Caucus fuckwits stands up and is like, point of order. I have a motion here that can't be bypassed. And I want a new speaker. And just fucking throw the monkey wrench into it. And then we all go through another week of speaker votes. All the chaos. I could see that. And I want to sit here, and I get to be right about that, too, if that happens. It'll be like, oh, I totally fucking called it. I did. It's going to be great. It's what I need to get through the day. So whatever you need to get through the day, if you want to tell yourself, Kyle, never negotiate with terrorists, or Kyle, it's all the Republicans' fault, or, Biden's right to be doing what he's doing, or whatever, whatever you need to tell yourself to make it through the day, because we're all in a shit situation that we can't get out of, and we have no control over, even though technically this is a democracy. Yeah, sure, you tell yourself whatever you got to do to be good, but, and comfort yourself, too, because at the end of the day, even if you're proven right, or I'm proven right, it won't matter, because whoever's on the losing side will be able to go ahead and couch everything with, well, we really didn't have any good solutions to this problem, Kyle. So technically no one was wrong. We all just had to pick from shitty options that we had no control over. And really, we're all losers, no matter what happens. And that's fine too if you need to hug yourself with that. That's great. But me? I was fucking right. I fucking called it. And that's what I got to live with right now, is how right I am. And it's a horrible thing, because me being right means a lot of people are going to go hungry. And a lot of people are going to lose their homes. But it means I was right. So, that's something.